Well, good evening, everyone, and once again, welcome to my home. It's a privilege to have you all here tonight. We have a very packed agenda, so I don't want to take up too much of our time, but I want to say thank you so much for joining me tonight. You could be doing many other things, but you've taken the time to convene tonight with us as we talk about education in Michigan Scientific District. We have a very dynamic group of panelists who are going to join us, so we'll get to that in just a minute. But I wanted to take an opportunity right now while we have a moment to just reflect on all those who are working through combating this COVID-19 virus. Those in our community, as the days go on, till there's a vaccine and testing that's coming. But we just want to take an opportunity to say that we're thinking about you, love you, and so we're going to get started with our agenda. If you want to go ahead and give me questions tonight, there are some questions that have already come in. They're continuing to come in, so please use the comment section so you can give those questions to us. Also, I want to let you know you can stream this live by visiting www.ryan.com/conversations. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to listen tonight because we have very, very active agenda covering a number of topics and then very dynamic areas to some basic facts on education in the state of Michigan. We know that Michigan ranks 37th out of 50. So we have to continue to Michigan should be leading the charge, not following our so once you dig into those numbers a bit deeply, we talk about K-12 education. Michigan is ranked 29th, so we have a lot of work to do. So we have several dynamic panelists. So if you're in this listening tonight, or if you're a student who's just finishing up high school or entering the next grade and you have questions, please feel free to join us. We have, we have, yes, yes, we're going to get to some of our questions that are coming in, but I wanted to take a chance to introduce some of our panelists who are going to be joining us tonight. First up, the panel tonight will be Dr. Greg Douglas. You may know him from his work with WNEF TV5. He does Education Matters. Hello.
Okay, we're back. Thanks for that.
Yep. All right. Well, we're back. I just want to say thank you again to everyone who's joining us. So many other places that you could be tonight, but you're taking the time to talk about one of the most important issues that's facing our community, and that's education. So tonight we've assembled a very dynamic group of individuals who will be talking about education. They are professionals in the field. Most of them I've had the opportunity to work with, and you will know them from working with your families and your students. So I just wanted to take a minute as well, because we know that there are folks in our community and in our world who are combating this COVID-19 virus. And we just want to let everyone know that our thoughts and prayers are with you. It seems like as the days go on, it's hitting closer and closer to home. But we have so much work to do within the state of Michigan and in our community. So thank you to our panelists who are joining us tonight, and to each and every one of you who are tuning in. And just as a reminder, you can view this conversation on clintbryant.com with a / conversations. So I'm going to jump in just a second here to introduce our panel. But I wanted to talk about some of the facts that we do know about education in the state of Michigan. Michigan ranked 37th out of 50. 37th out of 50 in overall education. And when you dive into K through 12 education, we're in the lower half. We're 29th, and we're continuing to slip. So that's the importance of having this conversation tonight. And what we understand is that our students also have, they're really behind the 8 ball, with the environment in which they're living and so many other conditions that are external. But we know that we do a lot of work to make sure that they have the bright future that they need. So I'm going to go ahead and ask if you would share this on your social media platform, on your Facebook page, because we want to include everyone into this conversation. We don't want no one to feel siloed. And just remember, you can connect with us on social media, your favorite platform, at Clint Bryant MI. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our very, very dynamic panel. We have Dr. Craig Douglas. You may know him from his work in Carleton Public Schools as a former superintendent, but also he is on WNEM TV5 every week talking about the importance of education and what we can do within our areas of reach. So thank you, Dr. Douglas, for joining us tonight as a very dynamic panel, and just pleased to have you with us tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. Also, yes, absolutely. And also on our panel tonight, we have Tiffany L. Pruitt. She is the former community engagement specialist for Saginaw Public Schools. She is the HR generalist. I often have conversations with her many times, almost on the daily, and she's a good partner in education. I remember I knew Miss Pruitt back from her time at Arthur Eddy in the 21st century program that goes back. I'm not going to say how far, but definitely knocking on 10 years. So thank you, Ms. Pruitt, for joining us tonight. Can't wait to get your perspective on what we can do, not only just in the wake of this COVID-19 virus, but in general. Once this passes, we know that our students are still going to be far behind the 8 ball. So we have to develop the resources that we have here. So thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Pruitt. Absolutely. Next on our panel, we have Dr. Erica Taylor.
Hi.
Hello, Dr. Taylor. She is the Executive Director for Early Childhood Education for Saginaw County, our ISD, Intermediate School District. I had the chance to see her a few weeks ago at church. We got to worship together, so it was great to see you there. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. I know you have a growing family and so much that's going on, but you have taken the time out tonight to spend with us and to impart your knowledge for our parents, for our students, and for the community at large on the state of education. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And also on our panel tonight, we have Trisha Baker. She was Teacher of the Year for the 2017-2018 school year. She teaches at Saginaw High School. She's a great friend. If you have a chance to follow her on social media, you know that she has great connection with her students, past and present. Many of them, some of them have moved outside of Saginaw County, but when they come back, they always visit Miss Baker. So it's great to have her join us tonight, and I'm just so thankful for that. So Trisha, welcome to our panel, and looking forward to hearing some of the things that you're experiencing in the classroom, your interaction with parents, and your overall thoughts about how we can improve education within Saginaw County.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to gather this panel tonight to strategize and develop a clear understanding of some of the tangible things that we can do. But I want to start off with a question, and I just want to encourage all of our listeners, if you have questions as it relates to education or other policy ideas, concerns, questions, things like that, go ahead, feel free to put that in. You're streaming on YouTube, but also on Facebook Live. So go ahead and throw those comments, questions, concerns in there. We may not get to all of them tonight. I try to stay close to time. We may go over a little bit, but please, we want to make sure that we get a response to each and every parent, every student, and members of our community who are reaching out, especially at this time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. One of the questions that I had, and one I know that many folks have right now, is what, in your opinion, I'm going to ask this of each of our panelists, what is the most pressing need in education right now? When we go back to school, fast forward a little bit, when we start back in September, what are some of the things that our students are going to need? You know, and what are some of the challenges that they're facing? I'll go ahead and start with Dr. Douglas.
Well, Clint, that's a really good question you're posing. I believe this is my 45th year in education,
Wow.
and I've never felt anything but pride being an educator. And so I would put on the table that I think the most important thing is to build trust. Trust between and among parents and teachers and community and elected officials and governmental watchdogs. We need to exhale and build trust. Why do I say that? Because my experience is when trust exists between the school and the home, the student sees that and the student understands and begins to accelerate and achieve. Absent that trust, it's going to be very problematic. I don't need to describe how tough this situation is currently, and yet I applaud our educators for doing an outstanding job of staying connected to students and staying connected with parents. And I think we can actually weather this storm and come out on the other side stronger if we focus on the big picture and we build trust. That's my thought that I would put out first. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very good. Excellent response. Let me go to you, Ms. Baker.
The biggest thing every year is building relationships with your students. And thankfully, COVID happened when it did, and we were able to already have relationships built with our students. So when we went online, we still already had a base to work from. And next year, we're not sure where we're going to be. So it may be difficult to build those relationships, but they're essential. And we also need to make sure that our students are being helped however they need to be helped. There's going to be a lot of stress on these students from having to go through all of this trauma. And I know that's very dear to Ms. Pruitt's heart as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's go to Dr. Taylor, and then we'll wrap up with Ms. Pruitt for this initial question. Dr. Taylor, what are some of the issues and challenges, the most pressing need as we look toward the future for the next school year, as we wrap this school year up in the coming weeks and months? But what are some of the things that you think are the most pressing in our community right now? Looking forward to that next school year in September.
So we're going to have a lot of mental health supports in place, not only for students, but for staff as well. We have many families within Saginaw who are already, they already experience adverse childhood experiences, with otherwise known as ACEs. And the thing about them and the way that we ended school this year, we have a whole lot of kids who are experiencing way more trauma than what they normally would have experienced, because they would have that time to come to school. They would have that time to be in a safe place for at least 5 days out of the week. Right now, we don't know what our kids are experiencing. We don't know what their parents are experiencing. And so when we come back in the fall, we have to have some strong mental health supports in place. As Ms. Baker said, it is going to be imperative to build relationships, not only with kids, but with the family as a whole. And we are going to have a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy, because we all know as educators that when kids come back to us, they always lose something over the summer. And now we have months. It's not just summer. We're going to have to build on all of this that they're going through once they come back in the fall. And then we don't even know what it will look like coming back in the fall. So I think it's going to take a lot of empathy on everyone's part, but it's going to take a whole lot of mental health support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ms. Pruitt.
All right, I have to ditto all of my colleagues. Definitely it's going to take building those positive relationships and looking at, the whole child and the whole family. And as Dr. Taylor mentioned, that support, that mental health support, we're also going to have additional educational support. And with that, we're going to need additional funding to put more boots on the ground to address the needs of the academic deficits that we may have. Also to provide that social and emotional support for our students and our families. And the biggest thing too, and Ms. Baker talked about that trauma piece, that is at the root of my heart, because not only just for our students, but for our families. And we're going to have to do a lot of focusing on building resilience in our families and in our students, because they're going to need those coping skills, because that trauma is real. We can't tell families and kids to get over what they have experienced, but we can teach them coping skills and how to be able to function in society.
Absolutely. I mean, that whole wraparound concept is more important now, I think, than ever. But I did hear you talk about funding, Ms. Pruitt. So I'm going to go to Dr. Douglas and Dr. Taylor and for this next question initially. And I had some conversations today, and there is talk about reducing per pupil funding. And what I wanted to know from each of you, having worked in education for such a long time, what are your thoughts on the current per pupil funding that we're receiving? And is that enough? I would say absolutely not. But I wanted to reach out to both of you with the resources that come to our local school districts from Lansing. Is that enough?
No. And I've got recently a study was done, right, that indicated that we were absolutely deficient, dead last if you ranked funding by state. And now, as you say, with the COVID-19 and the economy fallout, the worry is possible prorations, which we experienced during the Granholm era, not Governor Granholm's fault, but it occurred frequently during that era. And as you mentioned, Clint, the possibility of a decrease in the foundation grant next year. And we witnessed that in the Snyder era. And I would simply say, with no disrespect, how did that work out for us?
Mm-hmm.
Did it launch improvement? Did it launch more people aspiring to go into education as teachers? Did it aspire more people to go to grad school to be counselors and principals? No. In fact, quite the opposite occurred. So my plea to you would be to advocate for minimal harm funding wise. And again, look at the theme of trust, to try and trust our local educators that they are doing their best, instead of just kind of like whining them every time, publicly and privately, saying they've got to work harder, do more. How has that worked out? That's been the mindset for the last decade or more. And it's fallen well short of the mark.
Mm-hmm.
My plea would be, let's keep schools whole and do as each of my colleagues have identified, support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Taylor.
And to answer your question, no, we're not funded anywhere near what we should be. There was a school finance research collaborative, which really delved into how much it takes to adequately fund education. And so from that study and the results were released in 2018, it takes over $14,000 for a K-12 student. That's what the research shows. Actually, and that's for pre-K. That's a pre-K student.
Wow.
For K-12, it was well over $9,000 per student. And so we are nowhere near what we need to adequately educate our kids, especially when you take into account that some of our kids have disabilities, some of our kids have trauma, some of our kids are living in poverty. It's a whole array of different things that we as educators have to address. And like Dr. Douglas said, oftentimes our educators are blamed. They're blamed for what's not taking place, but are we really giving them the tools they need to do that?
And we haven't, in Michigan, we have not adequately funded education. I mean, we need a whole complete reinvestment in education and what that means, because we know that a lot of folks think that, well, I contributed to the lottery, so that money, let me just be clear here. The lottery contributes maybe 1.6 billion to the educational allotment, which isn't even 1/10. It's just under 1/10 of the budget. So just because you buy a scratch off, or even with the gas tax, that's not enough. That's absolutely not enough. We as a state have to prioritize education in Michigan. One of the questions I wanted to get to, I'm going to go to Ms. Baker and then Ms. Pruitt on this, and it goes to what Dr. Douglas was talking about earlier about retaining teachers and retaining talent. And I know that's one of the things that I struggled with when I was thinking about entering the field of education, and you're seeing that there's not a solid investment from our state. So I wanted to ask Ms. Baker and then Ms. Pruitt, when it comes to retaining talent and keeping some of our best educators, or even recruiting, I mean, how do we really recruit when there's such a lack of investment from the state?
Well, it's hard because there's a lot of people, even when they're in accelerated programs, they can make more money in industry than they can in education.
Right.
So just the general amount that educators are paid is a lot lower. So the pay is difficult for some people, especially if they have a family. Also, it used to be that we had, great retirement, great benefits. Those have been chipped away as well. So what we can do, and what we've been trying to do, is provide a lot of professional development to help people increase, providing mentors for teachers so they have a sounding board, they have support. And that helps, but when you have a family and you have to support them, it's hard for people to stay in the education field.
Ms. Pruitt.
We all know that it is rewarding being in the education field because you have the heart for it. But the reality of it is that we're going to need the money to recruit people and bring them in. And as Ms. Baker said, provide our staff with the professional development that they need to be coached up. But even going beyond that, as we look at recruiting staff, not only just looking within the state of Michigan for us, but also recruiting within the United States. And once we get our people, make sure that they understand that the type of district that they're working in. Right. Making sure that that professional development on multicultural competency is there, because it's one thing to have the degree, the certification to teach, or whatever the occupation is that you're doing in the schools, but making sure it's the right fit for our organization, people that want to continue to grow, people that have that heart for students and understand that you got to provide that additional support to students and families. You're working in an urban community, and all the things that go along with that. So having that knowledge of multicultural competency, I think we'll be able to retain and keep a lot of people once they get here, because they understand how to work with our students and families, and they value professional development and the ongoing learning that is being provided.
Absolutely. I want to just encourage those who are tuning in via Facebook. If you have comments, questions, go ahead and put them in that comment section, and please share as we continue to dive deep into educational issues within our community. I have a question for Dr. Douglas. Thankfully, Michigan has been largely spared in regards to some of the unfortunate school massacres that have happened in our country. But I just wanted to know from you, do you think that we are doing all that we can do to ensure that our students are safe at school? I mean, I know that I worked for Saginaw Public Schools for over a decade, and schools are a safe place. You know what I mean? That's where they go for not only just, their education, but also for meals, also for adult interaction. Just someone that will sometimes pay attention. So those are our safe places. So I just wanted to know from you, in your experience, having been a former superintendent, and looking at the trend before this whole COVID-19 had happened, but are we doing enough, and what can we do to make sure that our students are safe in one of the safest places that they should be?
Well, I want to assure you that I believe all educators, administrators, teaching staff, support staff, I think they are all hypersensitive to this issue and have done a terrific job of really becoming very connected with best practices of what needs to be done to make every effort for maximum safety. Now, I'm not going to say that every school is 100% safe, because I don't think any place in society can be 100% safe. But I think that schools have made great strides. Just a quick anecdote. Last year, I was privileged to work on a Title IIA grant with a nonprofit, and it placed me in 5 different districts in Michigan, 12 school buildings in all. And in each one, even in Lewiston Elementary, which was east of Gaylord in the middle, really, of God's country, in quotes. I mean, it's beautiful. But even there, you had to be buzzed in. You had to sign in. You had a visitor's badge. There were protocols in place that spelled safety in capital letters. And so I applaud our educators. Are we doing enough? I don't think we can ever do enough. But we've made terrific strides. And you're right, Clint, and I'm not boasting. I'm just saying, in gratitude, we have been, relatively speaking, spared in our state in recent years of some of the horrific tragedies. And may I say, it started with Columbine, and now it's to the point where it became so regular, it would not even lead the news reports at 6:30. We became desensitized to it as a culture, and we've got to fight that. we've got to be very sensitive to. Safety is number one.
Yeah, I think that I can tell you exactly where I was when we got the news about Columbine. I think it's one of those events that happen in our country that you can always point back to and say, well, I know exactly where I was when that happened. And I have to commend, our education professionals here with Saginaw Public Schools and the surrounding districts, Bridgeport, and Carlton, all for the work that they've done, Swan Valley, just to make sure that our students are safe. But I want to shift the conversation a little bit. I had a question for Ms. Baker, and I want to make sure that our listeners continue, please, to put your questions in the comment section below. But I wanted to ask Ms. Baker, are we doing enough when it comes to extracurricular activities? We know that we were struggling a few years ago with art, music, and PE. A lot of that stuff is returning. But, what are some of the other things that we can provide, and are we doing enough?
Well, we have brought the art, music, PE back into the schools, but we also have a lot of students who are interested in those things that sometimes get them during the day, but we don't have a lot of clubs and things like that.
Okay.
When we have staff that is stretched thin, because again, budget, then you don't have people that are helping out and sponsoring an art club or sponsoring a reading club or things like that. I have personally at my school, I'm a sponsor of the coloring club. I'm a co-sponsor of the creative writing club. I'm the National Honor Society advisor, along with some other duties that I do as well. So I'm one person and I'm doing 3 different things. So, but we have a small staff and then other people have other responsibilities. So there's not people there. There's kids that would love to do things after school. And there's kids that would like to play a sport, but they might not be the greatest and might not be able to play a varsity sport. So they miss those times when they were younger and there was more money and they could play at the Civitan or at CAC and those intramural things that they had when they were younger.
The rec center. That
Yeah.
was what it was
It
for
goes
me.
back to funding, unfortunately.
We're even seeing a cut in the budget for the DNR. I know that at First Ward Community Center, one of the programs that I champion, I got a chance to speak to them last summer. I didn't know that their funding was going to be cut so bad. So I'm hoping that can be restored, because what that program did was it allowed our students over the summer to work with other students to help clean up the community and develop some of those soft skills that they're going to need for the future. And it's paramount that our students they become career ready, but I did have a question. I could go on about the state budget for a very long time, but I wanted to ask Dr. Taylor, let's bring you into this conversation. We talked a little bit. I'm going to go to Dr. Taylor and then Ms. Pruitt. And the question is, while the access to information has certainly been improved in our lives in many ways, I think it has also negatively affected our children. And as we see a spike in youth suicide in the country, what can we do as a district and as a community to protect and teach our students the value of their own mental health?
So as a community, I would say that starts at home. That's not, I think it's unfair to put most of the responsibility, which is what we do, but we put a lot of the responsibility on educators. I can tell you I have 4 children, 6, 9, 15, and about to be 21. And with the, all of the online things that grab their attention, it takes an extra effort on our part as parents to make sure that we are aware of what they're doing online. A lot of that, they get online with certain things. I can tell you my 9-year-old, because kids are not stupid, they're highly intelligent. And so my 9-year-old had created a TikTok account. Yeah, he created the whole account.
Oh,
He was
wow.
putting videos and everything, and it took me because of noticing that there was a difference in what he was doing. A little bit more of, I'm going to go in here and look at, I don't want to stay out here. And I'm like, nah, you're doing something, So as a parent, we have to be aware. We have to be nosy with our children. And we can't say, oh, they're this age, they're teenagers, so they deserve their privacy. Well, yeah, they deserve maybe a certain amount of privacy, but we are still the parents. We have to really be involved in what they're looking at, what's coming in. You have a child that's being online just for hours on end. It's not safe. It's not mentally healthy. And a lot of things come in where that's coming into their mental state, and they're internalizing it. And so if it's negative, then they're internalizing themselves in a negative way. And so first, I believe it starts at home, and then as educators, because we have so much technology now, access in the schools, we have to also monitor that within our classrooms as well. But I would say a large part of it falls on the parents. It has to start with the parents.
Ms. Pruitt.
All right. We do know that the parent is the child's first teacher. And I mean this with all due respect when I say some parents parent the way they were parented or not parented. However, the good news is that there are resources out there to help parents that may need to strengthen their parenting skills so that they can do those things that Dr. Taylor is talking about. Understanding that, you're not being nosy, you're being a parent. You're checking on things with your parent. What's going on the internet? This is serious. Your child can connect with a predator because you're not watching, you're not paying attention. Okay, so, but taking advantage of those community resources and those school resources. I know within the district that I work in, coming out of the previous role I was in as the family engagement specialist, we offer training for our families, life skills, social skills, the trauma training, restorative practices where we teach parents and students how to resolve conflicts more peacefully. And within that, even teaching things like internet safety, because a lot of kids are bullying on the internet, not just in the schools, and letting students and families know the things that could happen if they do those things online. But again, if they don't know better, they will not do better. So I encourage families, number one, because you're the first teacher, to take advantage of those community resources out there to give you the support that you need to support your child from A to Z.
Yeah. And along with what Ms. Pruitt just said, our Birth to Five programs. Birth to Five is an excellent resource for parents, and giving them different resources and different strategies of what to do with their children. So, right from the start, because like I said, our kids are very intelligent. Our kids are smart. From birth on, they're smart. And so giving the parents those strategies, right from the beginning to work with their kids and to, and it's also about knowing your children, different ways to know when your child is not feeling their best, when they're being down, when they're exhibiting different things. And I've worked with Ms. Pruitt for so many years, and the resources that a lot of the programs that she was provided, they're priceless for our families.
Absolutely. And I know my grandmother, she celebrates. I'm not going to give her age. I was going to do it, but I can't. I just can't do it because I know she'd probably call me as we're on the line here. I'm not going to give her age, but she definitely used a rubric and some other, old school tools with Fred Flintstone. She's in a position to where she's raising some of her grandchildren. And, when you guys talk about technology, it's amazing, and Lil Sandra, she'll be going to the Birth Through Five program next year. I'm so excited for her because it's great work, and it's such an important time in developing the educational foundation. But I tell you what, she can fix Granny's phone, and she can also just go to town on that tablet. I just tell Granny, block everything out. We'll do PBS Kids, and what's the other one? Huda Man? I forget. I haven't done it in a couple. I've been in the classroom in a couple of years, but just some of those things to make sure that she's going to be ready when she goes. Hopefully, we can get her even maybe into jump into kindergarten. I don't know, but we're going to make sure that she's on her right path. We do have a couple questions that have come in, and this question was from Lisa. We need legislative advocates across the spectrum to promote the value of educators and funding. Educators' salary should be compared to a physician's salary. And let me tell you what.
Amen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've all seen on social media, it's teachers who really teach everyone, in every profession. And I'm a supporter of, there's a few different policy ideas that I have. So we won't be able to get to all of them tonight. So I encourage everyone who's tuning in to go to clintbryant.com and look at our policy agenda as it relates to education. One of the things that I think that we need to do is fix and restructure the Michigan loan program. I mean, that had been decimated in a previous administration, and we have to make sure that education is a field that is attractive, that folks are going to be able to raise a family and live a good life. And I understand public service, but you can only do so much when you're having to go back and recertify, and when you're having to pay down some of that debt. So I think that one of the things that I would like to do in addition to that would be a $5,000 grant program across 1,000 teachers. It'd be a pilot program for the state of Michigan, just to make that initial investment. Because I think once we get the data back from that, I think we're going to see the numbers shift, and we're going to see a whole change in education. But we have to be able to help out our educators. I had a question for Dr. Douglas, and then I'm going to go to Dr. Taylor. And this question came in from Dan. So hello, Dan. How you doing out there? It says, I believe sports in schools are essential for school spirit. Is that fair to say? I absolutely agree. That's one of the things I know that we value here in Saginaw is our games and getting together and really enjoying that. I mean, we have to focus on the nuts and bolts and making sure that our students have a good foundation. But I think there are some excellent benefits that our students can receive from working together collaboratively as a team when it comes to education. But I just wanted to pose that question to Dr. Douglas and then to Dr. Taylor.
Absolutely agree with you, Clint. And Dan's posed a very good question. And one of the first things that gets cut is sports. And, how does that work out? And then we do pay to play. And how does that shape? We need to value these experiences. Why? Because these are problem-solving opportunities. There's no better training ground for leadership than to be thrown into a situation in a competitive sport that makes you really extend your thinking and your performance. And there's example after example in my career where I can remember young athletes rising to the occasion and excelling. And I guarantee you that's served them well as they've become adults. So absolutely sports, extracurriculars in general, which includes what you were talking about before with art, music, and so forth. These enrichments are so valuable. Quick story, my wife and I were a part of a delegation 12 years ago. We went to China and to study Chinese education, right? What's the first thing that they did when we got there? They put on a dance performance. Wow. They sang for us. They did art. And my takeaway was, wow, here we are in America whacking these programs out of our curriculum at the time. And here in China, that's the first thing they did to show off exemplary student performance. So absolutely essential. All athletics, all extracurriculars.
Very good. Dr. Taylor, I know you're very close to sports. For those who
Yes.
who may not know, but I know you have a very close relationship. So if you could give us some information, I wanted to pose that question to you because you know firsthand how important sports are, not only in our community but for the overall development of our students.
Yes. So, for those that don't know, my husband is the varsity coach for the basketball team at Saginaw High. And so it's important. It's a way for kids, that's how like Dr. Douglas said, that they learn a lot of life skills playing on a team. And, I'm grateful that my husband's, his focus isn't all, well, of course they want to win, but he's always trying to, they always want to win. But of course, his focus too is to make sure that they're learning lessons for off the court. And so it's vitally important. I'm always, every year during basketball season, I go to every game because like we talked about earlier, some of our parents, some of the kids' parents, they may be working. They may not be able to go to a game to support their kids. Yeah. So I always go to all the games. I want to support them in all what they do. I go on the road with them because it's important. That's important to our kids. And so a lot of times when sports are taken out, or like Dr. Douglas referred to, any other extracurricular activities are taken away, that's another avenue for our students to really express themselves or to learn in a different way that, that they normally wouldn't be able to. And so sports are vitally important as well as the other extracurriculars.
Very good. Thank you, guys. We do have a question that's coming from Renee via our website. We have some other folks who have questions from YouTube. We'll get to those in just a minute. But this comes from Renee, and it's about charter schools. And it reads, we know that charter schools provide options for parents, but public schools are the backbone of our country's educational system. Do you have any recommendations on how the two can coexist and how they should be funded? Well, I know that I have my own views on that, but I'll pose that question to Ms. Baker. But what I want to say is what I understand is that charter schools are going to be here in the state of Michigan for a while. But what I understand is from working in the classroom that charter schools do not have the same provisions as public education. And that's just the basic facts of it. And no, we have to look into the financials. We have to look into other things because education should not be something that is for profit. Let me be clear here. Our students need valuable resources. And I just don't feel that we should be beholden to stockholders or shareholders or anything like that when it comes to educating our students so that they have the resources that they need. I would also implore them to please, have elections. That's one of the major differences between public education and charter schools is the fact that public schools elect a board of education, whereas opposed to charter schools, they appoint a board of directors. Oftentimes we don't know who those members are. And we've seen just in our most recent history, whether it was last year, 6 months ago, or 3 months ago, we're in these intervals right now where we're seeing very tragic things that have come from some of our charter schools, with in relation to assault and different things like that. We can't have that. But my biggest takeaway is that we need to make sure that our public schools are funded properly. Let me bring in Ms. Pruitt, and then we'll come to Ms. Baker. Thoughts on charters versus public education?
Clearly that, we know that charters do bring about competition for the public schools. Sure. I honestly don't believe that schools should be in competition with each other when we have the same goal. However, I do believe that charter schools should also be held to the same accountability that public schools are being held for. Because again, our children's lives and future are at stake. And so, pretty much what I have to say about that. I have nothing, to bash against charter schools. We all have our pros and cons, but I do feel that all school that's funded and receive any type of public funding, because some charter schools do receive, a portion of public school funding, they should be held accountable just as well as the fully funded public school.
Amen to that. Ms. Baker, and then we'll go up to Dr. Douglas briefly.
I had previously worked at a charter school before I started working at Saginaw High School. So I have seen both sides of the coin. And I worked at a charter high school, which is actually very rare because charter high schools, because of the Michigan Merit Curriculum and things that are required, it's very hard to staff a public high school. So most public charter schools are like the K through 8s. Where it's easier to find a teacher that can teach multiple subjects. You don't have to teach chemistry. You don't have to teach physics and all of those specialized sciences and maths. And I enjoyed my time at the charter school, and they are both considered public schools. They both receive public funding, but it is a different level of who they're accountable to. The charter schools are overseen by usually a university. Dr. Mamie Thorns, who I had seen in the comments, was one of the people overseeing us when I was there. And it all depends on who's overseeing you. Some colleges do a good job, some do not, but mostly you have more opportunities in your traditional public school. And
go ahead, Ms. Baker. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out. This guy was going to jump right in there with you.
We also receive a lot of students in the 9th grade that come from the charter schools, and they might have an IEP, and they were given, when they come to our school, they have all these accommodations that they never had at the charter school. And those things are not fair.
Right.
Absolutely. And there's a gross lack of oversight because the things that have happened in our community should have never happened, and they should never happen again. It's absolutely. Let me get Dr. Douglas. Let's allow you to weigh in real quick on this.
Each of you are spot on. I just would try to emphasize again that charter schools are indeed public schools. They should be held to the same standards. I think they feel that they are, but there are ways around some of the accountability pieces. Clint, to your point, the selection of whoever's on their board is very important. And I would put on the table, I worked at Saginaw Valley, and my personal belief is I think Saginaw Valley does an outstanding job with their charters. When the charter cap was lifted, Saginaw Valley was not one that expanded their fleet. They kept the schools that they had, and they worked very hard with the schools that they had. And I think the Achilles heel in all this is the authorizers. The universities, as Ms. Baker said, do really a pretty good job. But I was absolutely flabbergasted to go to a meeting in Lansing one time and to learn that, and no offense, but to learn that Detroit Public Schools authorizes a whole fleet of charter schools. And here at the time, this was before the reorganization, here's a school that's underwater financially that has all these challenges of staffing, and yet they have charter schools in their fleet. I was kind of befuddled by that. And a lot of intermediates have charters, and some do a really good job with them. Saginaw ISD, I believe, has a charter in their fleet, and they do a very good job. But not all intermediates have that oversight. So I would coach Clint for you to think about the school board selection piece, and also who is authorizing and overseeing the charter school. I am personally biased towards universities and higher ed doing it, so that there can be some staff development and some oversight that's value added, that's worked in. They are here to stay. I'm not sure we need more of them, though. We went from 500 and some public schools in the state of Michigan, where we're over 700 now, and the growth was because of the charter school cap being lifted.
Dr. Taylor, anything that you would like to add in onto that portion of our conversation tonight?
Just that I agree with what Ms. Pruitt said. I just don't particularly care for the competitive part of it. And when I say that, what I mean is the bashing.
Right.
If you open a school and you're trying to educate kids, that's fine. But I don't think you need to bash the public school to do that. And so that's my only issue with a charter school. You know, if you're educating kids, that's what we're all trying to do. But we don't need to bash each other to do that. That's, you know, the school that your child attends, that's a family choice.
That's right.
But just we don't need to be negative in the way we do it.
Yes. Well, our time is coming to an end. I know that we still have a number of questions that have come in via YouTube and also via Facebook, and I'm committed to that. But what I do want to let you know is that I just want to make sure through the course of our time up until August in the campaign that you can always reach out to me, and I'm going to be one who is going to listen. That's what I did while I was on the city council. And as we look to progress toward the legislature, I just want to make sure that we develop and have developed a policy agenda that's comprehensive to help our students, to help you guys as educational professionals and our community at large. So I just want to thank each and every one of you who have joined me tonight on this panel. I think we've had a great dialogue. We're going to have to do this again. And I want to make sure that I encourage all of our listeners tonight. If you do have questions, you can always visit me and connect on social media by visiting www.clintbryant.com, and you can look at our policy agenda. Also, you can text Clint to 22999. Guys, again, so much for joining us. Dr. Taylor, Ms. Pruitt, we had Ms. Baker, and Dr. Douglas. Thank you guys again so much. There's so many other places, so many other things that you guys could be doing. Remember to follow us on your favorite social media platform. My handle is @ClintBryant, MI. And you can sign up on our website to volunteer, to contribute, and really stay up to date on what's going on. I know we're being inundated with so much information, and it's important that I, in running for this legislature, provide the most factual information and respond to every question and concern that we get from our community. So thank you guys for joining us for Dinner and Dialogue. We have some really awesome stuff that's planned because this is our new normal, connecting via, via the internet. So thank you guys. It was a privilege to welcome you into my home, and we will make sure to do this again real soon. So take care. God bless. Stay home and stay safe.